Okay, all right, folks. We got to do some house cleaning here today. And right off the bat, I got to take care of my partner, Angel Santiago from Puerto Rico. And he watched me tie the horse to the trailer the other day, and then he sent a letter saying, I need to know how you did that. So, all it was a way to show to tie up this kind of an outfit. This is not a $700 bozal and a macate. This is Home Depot. Now, you take the lead rope, or the rein, excuse me, and lay it over the neck. Now you just double it in your hand, run it back through, and tie an overhand knot.
You're shadowing the whole situation.
This is a knot. That's all it is, an overhand knot. Now you tie another one. That's an overhand knot. So now you have two overhand knots. Don't be confused with a frayed knot. Now, this part of the lead rope, which is the lead rope, I tie to the trailer, and this part doesn't get hung up on a foot or in trouble of any kind. I will show you. That is how I tie my horse up with my, whatever you want to call this outfit I'm riding with. This is a cheap cowboy hackamore, as in cheap. Bueno, que vaya bien. That's it. Okay, folks, now I got a letter from a cowboy named Tice. Tice Guyman. He's a little twitchy. He's a little worried about getting this answered quick. So we shut this whole outfit down so I can answer his questions. And he brought up a very, very valid, good point. We've made so many videos that it can, in fact, get confusing. And because I'm not the orator that some folks wish I would be, I just move on. And whenever I'm giving a video, I'm talking about a horse. And what I say is not across the board the way it works for all horses. If you have bred a Clydesdale mare to a halfling or stallion, think about it. It's not going to work when I tell you about a thoroughbred horse story. I grew up on a ranch in Utah. We rode in Sweetwater curbs. I've always started colts in a halter and then a bozal, and if clients requested, used a broken snaffle. Not having wanted to use the snaffle and having limited knowledge of bits, I have never rode my 4-year-old horse in anything beyond a bozal, hackamore. Okay, I'm doing this verbatim. When I rode for the public, the same thing happened to me. I'd take a colt and I'd say, how do you want it to come home? Hackamore or snaffle? 99% of them would say snaffle because the hackamore is, to me, a part of the process for making a bridle horse. As in, remember that, bridle horse. So, the word beyond a bozal hackamore, the word bozal is what this is. If you're east of the Mississippi, it's called a bosal, which, there you go. The word hackamore is the entire thing, the headstall, the bozal, and the macate. So to say the word bozal hackamore is like jumbo shrimp. All right. I can do all my, here's the important part. I can do all my lateral work a rope. She gives off a leg pressure beautifully, but she tends to get hot and try to push through the hack at higher rates of speed and does not want to collect, shut down, or rein in. That's called running off. So what it means is he's an honest person, and I appreciate that. And when it comes down to the speed and having to get things done, the horse just runs through the whole outfit, runs right through the hackamore, which is the whole outfit. Okay, this has been going on for years. The opposite of that is I just talked to a man the other day that has a trail horse, will never get off a trail, will never punch cows, will never rope, and basically just has a trail riding horse, and wanted to know if he could stay in the Hackamore because his horse is so good in it. I'm going to say yes. That's a perfect scenario for you. Now, bear in mind, if a semi comes by at 60 miles an hour with a tarp flapping, things could get ugly. But I'm just saying, if you want to stay in a Hackamore, that's fine. I'm not telling you not to. Those of us that use the Hackamore already know in our mind it's only a foundation tool. When we ride a colt in a Hackamore, our brain is focused on the end result, which is a bridle. Now, the bridle can turn out to be a half-breed or a spade. But when it's all over, there's a western bit and you're riding one-handed. So now, A, you can rope with your free hand, and B, you can shut your horse down by pulling back on the reins. So this is what happened to him when things get hot. And what it meant was that the horse was in the Hackamore too long. And so now it's run through it. And so when you either make a choice, you stay in the drags and eat dirt all day, or if you got to step out and do something, you really need something more than that Hackamore on there. So yes, you do need to transition to a bit. My own personal feeling about snaffle bits and Hackamore to snaffle is that if they run through a Hackamore, the odds are pretty good they're going to run through a snaffle. And if you're trying to rope something or get through country without dying at 35 miles an hour, you really don't have time for a cutesy one-range stop and or shutting the horse down. You don't have time and or geographically able to do a lot of things. So, to finish that up, the horse went through the Hackamore. You're dead in the water. Should have moved on before it went through the Hackamore. And you have to pick your rides. Now, I know when you work on an outfit, you go wherever they tell you. But myself personally, I'm at the age in my life where now I can pick my rides. And when I first show this horse to cattle, it'll be a cow walking across the prairie, and hopefully she'll be dragging a hind leg. That's how I will introduce cattle. And then I will go and help and say, partner, I'm riding a colt. And he'll say, if he's a hand, he'll say, well, good, you take the drags. Nobody wants riding drags anyway. So if the cattle break and they all run off and all the cowboys take the ropes down, I will be the witness. I will not partake in this riot. So that's the way I do it today with my soon-to-be 5 years from now bridle horse. Okay. 2 weeks ago, I watched a man on an older horse. I don't know how old it was exactly because this first day I'd seen him. He came out in a Hackamore, and it was a classic Hackamore, all the gear, everything was really cool. And then we spilled the cattle and everything fell apart. Well, all he could do was keep spinning that horse because it kept running through the Hackamore. Well, what that meant to the rest of us was that he was no longer a willing partner. He was history. He was nothing to do with what we were trying to accomplish. You cannot turn a cow back if you're spinning your horse in a tight circle. He was set up to fail. Okay. In searching for bits for working ranch horse, and after finding the missing link snaffle, I came up with a game plan to progress from Bosal, missing link, San Joaquin, eventually spade. So that's 4 steps. Now he's already had it run through a Hackamore, remember that. So from the Bosal, that's history. Into the missing link. This is a 4-year-old horse. Okay, the missing link snaffle, which is this, he can in fact ride in it. This is not a leverage bit. This is a bit that puts pressure, not pain, on the mouth, and if you don't release, the horse will learn to run through it, just like the Hackamore. So if you pick your rides, you in fact can go to the missing link snaffle and act like you just first started the horse because you're basically starting over. Now, when you can track a cow on a loose rein and he holds his head together, then you would be ready to move on. A lot of people if they've run a 4-year-old through the hackamore, have to make a decision. And if somebody brought me a 4-year-old, and if I was still riding for the public, I would say he's coming home in a Western bit. That's what I'm telling you. Now, I would school him in the missing link snaffle. Schooling means going out riding by yourself, putting a leg on him, getting around sagebrush, getting collection, self-carriage, walk, trot, lope, loose rein. You pick up the rein, he goes into collection, he does what you want. Now you end up riding one-handed in the missing link snaffle. Timeline, 60 days probably. So now you got 30 more days. It takes approximately 1 week to transition them over to a Western bit, and then you get 3 weeks off of just enjoying the horse. And on that note, if you take outside horses and allow for fun time, you don't have to do all just a crash and burn deal. Enjoy them for a few weeks before you send them back. So that could happen. So the 4-way plan, after the missing link, he said he would go to the San Joaquin. Now, something that happened in our video world about the San Joaquin bit, something was lost.
It was a website.
Okay, it was a website. Now, you know how much I know about computers, so I'm guessing we have to clean out the cobweb. Okay. The San Joaquin mouthpiece looks like that. When I say San Joaquin, I mean a mouthpiece, not a cheek piece. There's 2 parts to a Western bit. The San Joaquin mouthpiece is famous for having a tongue release where my finger is. The tongue can get under it. The bit that my bride was explaining about to somebody was a San Joaquin mouthpiece, which is this. And she mentioned the word severe because of this. The cheek is an S. And those of you that read anything about Arnold Rojas, he always mentions that you could lift a boxcar with him. Because of leverage. That's what this is about. This is a really extreme leverage bit. This is a leverage bit that's not extreme. This curve, when you've learned after a while of riding, will break them at the withers, which helps pick up a quarter horse. This is a Santa Barbara cheek, which is basically straight with a counterbalance. So when you pull, it falls back. All right. So just so we're clear, the San Joaquin mouthpiece is not a severe mouthpiece. Here is a high port and or half-breed mouthpiece. It's a solid piece of steel. Now please let me elaborate as to how all of these can be severe. If your curb strap is too loose and you pull back on the bit and turn this bit over, you have just now drove the half-breed and or high port into the roof of the horse's mouth. So it's all about the curb strap and how well you know to pressure and release. So I hope that explains that part. So when you use the word San Joaquin, all you're doing is saying, well, I need a bit with tongue release. Well, maybe you do. You get to decide that. I know I've rode a lot of horses in probably, this was 1970 something anyway. They really liked this bit. And I always thought, well, it's because of the tongue release. Well, maybe it was, but it might be because it's inlaid copper in the back. I don't know. I know I've gotten along well with it, but if you want to get down to the nut cutting, if you have a straight mouthpiece and you pull back, that mouthpiece doesn't do anything but rotate. And if you pull hard enough on a San Joaquin, right here and right there is actually going to put pressure somewhere. I say the word somewhere because you need to stick this in a horse's mouth and see where it's actually hitting the mouth. For what I've noticed in my experience, this is pushing on the tongue that is in fact balled up, and the muscle in the tongue is tightened up as much as it can to protect its mouth. So that's what touches them. Okay? There is no pressure with this bar. So once again, don't get all caught up in this, but understand there's a mouthpiece and a cheek piece, and the curb strap in your hands dictates how they work. Okay. And eventually the spade is what he said. Now we all know what a spade is. This is a spade bit. Traditional Santa Barbara spade bit. The spade bit is a signal. When this leaves the tongue, the horse goes into self-carriage the way I teach my horses. It has nothing to do with the palate and or roof of the mouth. So if I owned his 4-year-old horse, I would put it in the missing link snaffle, pick my rides, get the horse light, walk, trot, lope, track a cow, loose rein. Then I would move on to a half-breed bit. And this bit is a leverage bit. This bit can be turned into a signal bit. And what it means is that when you pick up on the chains, which I've told you about with my other horse, the horse says, "What do you need?" The problem I have with him finishing up in a spade bit, and it's all about the horse. Remember, a horse, the story, the cowboy. Because of it running through the hackamore, it's already got its brain set to push. So now you've got to deal with that when you finally get to the spade. And if you've been using a half-breed Western bit, in my opinion, then you have in fact set up a leverage situation. And you may lighten it up to a signal bit, but the odds are against you because you're already using it as a lever. Get it? So when you put the spade on, the spoon means absolutely nothing to him. I hope that clears something up. So that horse would end up for me in a half-breed bit, which there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, he mentioned that the missing link snaffle had the solid mouthpiece but no shanks, and as I have never rode her in a bit, it would be a good transition. That's true. Bosal, hang it on the wall. Snaffle, yes. Half-breed, yes. All right. Now, what he's bringing to my attention is that I'm contradicting myself on a lot of videos. Well, I'm talking about different horses in different situations. I have a lot of people get a hold of me and they talk about thoroughbred horses that run off. Okay, well, they've been from the track, which is kind of what they're supposed to do, is run off. You mentioned that you did not ride your colts, plural, in the missing link, but you reserved it for older horses that needed fine-tuned or restarted. Okay. The truth is, I'm not going to ride this colt in my missing link snaffle. If I do my homework right, my belief in my schooling as a student, I want to make my colt through the hackamore stages and onto the spade. That's the old traditional way to make them. Well, that's what I want to do. Reserved for older horses that needed fine-tuning / restarted. Not older horses. All horses. Horses that have run through a twisted wire snaffle or a broken piece mouth snaffle. Correction bits, which are right up there with the communist plot. Those are the kind of things that you have to fix. That's where my snaffle would be used. Older horses, I can teach them lateral work in a corral or on the flat and then ride them in the western bit outside for leverage if I'm cowboying on them. So I just help them bend their head a little bit is all that reason for the missing link snaffle. So yes, fine-tuned or restarted, but it's for young and old horses. Now, the one that personally got to me was, he said, with Chicago, you had replied to someone. His name is Chinako. not Chicago. He's out of Chicago by Ford. That's not true. Okay. You would go directly from the bosal to the spade with no bits in his mouth before the spade. In his thought, which would be Tice, in my thought of having a transition bit not necessarily a good idea, well, you got to remember, partner, my horse hasn't run through the hackamore. It's never even had one on it. So I'm going to avoid your thought by not getting myself in that position. So the word no bits before the spade, that's back to the student of their bridle horse and the direction that I choose. Here is the bosal. I've blocked it for several months and it will fit on my colt. That's what I will ride him in. This is the 1/2 inch bosal. Probably in a year and a half from now, this is what I will ride him in, unless I trade for something better. Just so we're clear, this is the old style traditional bosal. All right, I traded for this, but reason I got it was to show you the difference in length. This is the old style as far as I'm concerned. We have evolved to the level of using a shorter bosal, which means less wraps, which means less drop, which means more sensitive. And this happens to a lot of people. They have a bosal that they got from their grandfather or somebody, and they're beautifully made, and that's what they want to use. Well, the way that I do it now is I don't use these. Now, if I had a Clydesdale colt, I would probably be able to use this. But I don't. Okay. So this transition from there to here to the bosalito. Now, tradition has just now been broken. This is a bosalito. This is a nylon rope. It's not from the hide of a nylon cow. This is a nylon rope braided over with a really nice knot in it. Okay, the bend of it is very supple. I personally don't have a problem with riding a horse in what's known as a 2-rein. There would be a small diameter macate hooked to this, and I would ride my colt with this bosalito prior to the spade bit. And I've told you this before. If I choose to use the rawhide one, which is this one, then I in fact will have a small macate hooked to it. And the thing I do different than most people evidently, which is absolutely irrelevant to me, is that when I hang the spade on Chinaco, he'll stand out here hanging under the ring, holding the bit with no curb strap, no chains, no reins. That's what I do. And then I will watch him develop and hold that bit in the perfect position, standing on the ground, not being ridden. Then I will put it on his head and put on my bosalito, which typically would be 2 reins after I put the spade on him, but I don't have the other rein. I don't have the romal on. All I have is this rein. So it's still 1 rein. Okay. The reason I do that is because when I go out making a circle and I'm trotting across rough ground, he is going to learn to balance that bit because it's going to swing in his mouth. And I've had them take their mouth, and you've seen them jerk their head up in the air because the bit's banging them. Well, I don't go to group over that. I just kind of relax, and then the horse puts his head down and says, I probably shouldn't do that. So that's how I get them used to carrying the bit. Then down the road, 6 months or however long it takes, I add the curb strap, the chains, and the reins. Now I, in fact, have a 2-rein because this will have a macate on it. Then you transition using your hand more for one and less for the other, and then you turn that around, and pretty soon you're not using these reins, and it's all the romal rein. Well, pretty soon is all relevant. Now, I've just taken you through 5 years of riding. And I'm not trying to be smart, but I'm trying to clear this stuff up. So yes, I go Bosal, 2-rein, spade. And he asked, what do I mean by 2-rein? Well, I just explained it. And for the last time, I'd like to tell you, there's nothing wrong with a half-breed bridle horse. There's nothing wrong with a spade bit bridle horse. That's the way it turns out. I've made both. And I made the half-breed horse because he could not stand and or take the spade. And I didn't want to do it just because I'd have bragging rights. The fact is, he carried himself really nice in the half-breed. So, I hope that answers some questions. And another man wanted to know how I tie my rope to the saddle. Now, I hope you mean literally like I've got on my horse. The other day when I rode him for the first time, I had a strap through the gullet and around the rope and buckled so that I wouldn't tear the rope off the saddle if he blew up. And that's not a real high-level deal. You just put a strap through the gullet and buckle it off, and that holds your rope in place. But just so we do due diligence, as they call it in town. This is how I carry my rope. If some of you ever heard the term valise, it used to be a leather suitcase with a leather handle. And some of the old vaqueros would holler valise, which means grab that. They also say that that's how the bareback rigging got started, but I don't have any idea about that. Now, I don't keep my outside loop bigger on this colt because of safety reasons. Later on, the outside coil is bigger so that you can get to it quicker when you're using it. That's tradition. This is called insurance. I keep it small so in case I happen to fall off, I don't stick my leg through it on the way out. As you notice, this goes around the saddle horn into a buckle on the offside. So that, my friend, is how I tie my rope off. And just for the sake of knowing, if you buy a saddle, 9 out of 10 of them have a rope strap that's about this long. So you go to the Tractor Supply, the highest level tax store in the United States, and get you a split rein and use one of them for this. Okay, thank you.